Hello, everyone. Welcome to San Francisco Ballet's Points of View lecture series. I'm Jasmine Yep-Win, and I'm the Associate Director of Education at San Francisco Ballet. On behalf of everyone at SF Ballet, thank you for joining us for tonight's third Points of View lecture of the 2022 season. We are thrilled to have performances in front of live audiences back in the Opera House. So thank you to all of our audiences, both in person and online, for supporting SF Ballet throughout the pandemic. This season, we are so pleased to provide the Points of View lecture series on Facebook Live and YouTube. Before the pandemic, Points of View lectures were held in the War Memorial Opera House before Wednesday evening performances. This year, we are continuing that tradition, and we are offering a new Points of View lecture every Wednesday performance online at 6 p.m. Pacific time. The recording of today's Points of View lecture will continue to be available to view online on SF Ballet's YouTube channel through the end of the 2022 season. For a full list of the schedule for this year's Points of View lectures, as well as our other education and audience engagement offerings, please visit us at sfballet.org/events. Before I introduce our host and dancer, there is a bit of housekeeping. This event is streaming on Facebook Live and YouTube. We might have time for questions or comments from our online audience at the end of the discussion. As our panelists cannot see the questions or comments that are posted on those platforms, we will have a staff member reviewing the questions and comments and passing those along so that we can include them in the discussion. Additionally, when commenting in the live chat, we respectfully request everyone to abide by our community guidelines, which can be found in the link in the chat. Today's Points of View celebrates comic ballets, including Thomasin and Poslikov's Don Quixote, which runs through Sunday, March 6th in the Opera House. First, we will explore what makes comedic ballets successful and fun for the audience with an engaging lecture about comic ballets by Claire Sheridan. The second part of tonight's evening is going to be a conversation with Claire and Katita Waldo, current Ballet Master and former SF Ballet principal dancer, as they talk about bringing these hilarious characters to life on stage in SF Ballet's production of Don Quixote and other comedic ballets. Claire Sheridan established the dance program at St. Mary's College of California and is the founder of LEAP, a National Bachelor of Arts degree program specifically designed for professional dancers. Claire Sheridan also has an extensive international experience as a teacher and choreographer at academics and universities throughout Europe and Asia, including the St. Petersburg Conservatory of Russia, Cambridge University in England, and the National Institute of Advanced Studies in India. She has been a dance educator for the San Francisco Ballet since 2007. Welcome, Claire. We're so glad to have you today. Katita Waldo is our guest artist, former principal dancer and current SF Ballet Master. Spanish-born Katita Waldo trained at San Francisco Ballet School prior to joining the company in 1988. With the company, Waldo was promoted to soloist in 1990 and then to principal dancer in 1994 before retiring in 2010. During her 22-year tenure, she performed principal roles in diverse repertoire of works by acclaimed choreographers, including Balanchine, Forsyth, Helgi Thomasin, and Christopher Wheeldon. In 2008, Thomasin asked Waldo to serve as ballet master for 2 premieres from the New Works Festival in 2010. And then she was appointed ballet master, a position that she holds today. And we are so lucky to have her bringing her talent, her expertise, and her knowledge into all the work that she does to bring these ballets to the stage. I'm really looking forward to this lecture and the interview with Katita, and I hope our viewers are too. Over to you, Claire.
Hi, folks. I'm going to share my screen. And okay, I want to continue. And share. Okay, folks. Can everyone see Don Quixote's sidekick Sancho Panza flying through the air? Jasmine, all is well?
All is well.
Thank you. Okay, yes, folks, we're going to take a look at comic ballet tonight. So what is a comic ballet? For this presentation, I'm going to define it as a ballet of a light or comic nature, whether it's a full-length story that includes a lot of humorous moments, or it's one act that's designed to be funny from beginning to end. The primary objective of a comic ballet is to entertain people and make them laugh. Okay. You know, there are not a lot of comic ballets around. They can be difficult to create because you can't use words to deliver the punchline. Choreographers just have movement along with the right sets, costumes, music, and hopefully a good story or premise. Now, speaking of costumes, you can't go wrong with a good chicken suit. This is from the Royal Ballet's La Fille Gardee. In addition to no words, creators of comic ballets have to deal with the fact that humor is always subjective. It can change with the times and the culture. So it's very important for a choreographer to know the audience. If folks can't relate the joke to their own experience, they're not going to laugh. And of course, the jokes have to be clearly presented to the audience so that the connection can be made. Now, here are the ugly stepsisters in Ashton's Cinderella, 1965. And I think the audience got this joke. Well, of course, the choreographer also needs dancers with the artistry, skill, and timing to bring their ideas to life. A little later, we'll be talking with the eminently qualified Katita Waldo to hear her ideas about comedy and ballet, rules of the road, etc. And here is Katita as the stepmother in Christopher Wheeldon's Cinderella, trying to hammer the golden slipper onto her daughter's foot. It's poor Sarah. Now let's take a look at a few ballets that illustrate how some well-known choreographers have met the comedy challenge. I'm going to start with The Concert by Jerome Robbins. Jerome Robbins was one of the 20th century's most popular ballet and Broadway choreographers. He created The Concert for the New York City Ballet in 1956, and he made it at the same time he was working on West Side Story. Choreographing different genres of dance at the same time seemed to energize him. Robbins loved the music of Chopin, and so The Concert explores the secret daydreams and fantasies of audience members who are attending a Chopin piano concert. There's actually a pianist on stage. All right. I'm having a little technical issue here.
Well, I will just go ahead and dive into an interview, and I apologize because it is not going to be quite what we were looking at yet because we haven't had the interview about comic ballets, but I would love for you to just kind of run us through some of your some of the ones that our audiences may have seen you recently. I know Claire had just shown a photo of Cinderella, Christopher Wheeldon's Cinderella, with you as the stepmother. And so I feel like maybe starting there as one of the comic ballets. It was great. I got to see you perform that. And it was so much fun because, of course, it's a new ballet and Cinderella was new and exciting. But also to see you in that type of role was so much fun for audiences. There were people sitting around me that were like, is that Katita? So I'm wondering if we can just start there as we try to get Claire back.
Absolutely, no problem. I know that the focus is comedy, and comedy is really hard. It's hard in any venue, and for ballet in particular, to manage comedy is a triumph. And I think that there have been some wonderful ballets that have succeeded magnificently in their comedic profiles and their ability to make an audience united in the feeling of what is funny. Comedy is not usually universal. I think tragedy is a lot more something that is a lot more something that's terrible English. Tragedy is something that more people can relate to universally. So I think most people could agree that the story of like Romeo and Juliet or any kind of that kind of tragedy registers and is relatable by more people. But comedy is a little more personal, and there are things that people think are funny and things that people don't think are funny, and it's harder to find a universal audience when you're doing comedy. So to be able to achieve that in a performance venue where you have a large audience that isn't necessarily, following a particular comedian but in a theatrical environment is a challenge. I have been very, very privileged to have had the opportunity to perform in a couple of very funny ballets. I was in the concert. It was one of my favorite ballets to dance. I actually requested it to be part of my retirement week when I retired, and I was able to do that. I had the great privilege of being the stepmother in Cinderella and Christopher Wilde in Cinderella when we premiered it here. I came out of retirement after about 3 years to do that. Very painful on the feet, but hopefully that added to the humor. And I was also in Filling Station, and I have seen a couple of, and Gala performance, a couple other ballets that were specifically designed to be humorous. And it was always very rewarding and very challenging because, as I said, it's not a universal what people are going to find funny. So when you had an audience that responded, it was exceedingly rewarding. But it is a challenge to be funny on stage.
Well, thank you for giving us a little peek into just the challenges of bringing something to life on stage, which might seem hilarious in the studio,
Exactly.
and then you're waiting for the audience to respond, and it's really funny to those in the know, but is it going to read well to the 3,000 people out there in the house?
Exactly.
I thank you for your flexibility, Katita. I appreciate it. I think we have Claire back. And
Yes.
so I'm going to invite Claire back into the conversation, although I do love chatting with you and would love to talk with you more. But I'm gonna go back to the schedule and pass the mic back to Claire, and we'll give it another try.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody say your prayers.
All right.
Uh,
I'm here. Can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you. This is just not working.
Oh.
I cannot believe this. It won't share. I think this is bizarre. Of course, another screen, share. Ah, thank God. Okay, something's happening. All
It
right.
is working, Claire. We
Yeah.
are starting to see your screen and your PowerPoint. So
Okay, let us pray.
we're going to go back into the lecture,
Yeah.
and then Katita, I guess you can continue to stretch. Maybe I'll stretch with you on my home and my floor, and you can stretch over there. And we will go back to the lecture and then pick up the interview. But thank you for giving us a little taste of the concert and Cinderella and some of the other ballets that you were working on.
My pleasure.
Okay. Now, before I was so rudely interrupted by technology, that Chopin did love the music of Chopin. And so the concert explores the secret daydreams and fantasies of audience members who are attending a Chopin piano concert. There's actually a pianist on stage. The wandering minds of the audience conjure up visions of butterflies, a mad ballerina, umbrellas, and a group of under-rehearsed dancers. Let's take a look at this latter section, the under-rehearsed dancers. It's called the Mistake Waltz, performed by Pacific Northwest Ballet. Okay. What we just saw falls into the cat video classification of comic ballets. Now, I just made that up, but I think sometimes ballet dancers in performance and cats have a lot in common. They both are beautiful athletes, graceful, agile, limber, with an elegant, self-possessed aura. So when we see something go wrong, let's say when a cat falls off a sofa, or when ballerinas lose it on stage, we see the incongruity and we laugh. Author Maria Bastillos writes that a cat's natural beauty and majesty is eternally just one tiny slip away from total humiliation. Maybe that's why we like cat videos and why we laugh at ballet screw-ups. We can all relate it to the precariousness of our own dignity. Now let's move into parody and look at Anthony Tudor's gala performance, choreographed in 1938. The music is Prokofiev. As a choreographer, Tudor is primarily known for his psychological ballets, using movement and gesture to reveal the deep emotions and motivations of his characters. But he also came up with this classic comic ballet about three egotistical diva ballerinas who were brought together to dance at a fundraising gala. There's a flamboyant Russian ballerina who takes too many curtain calls, an Italian ballerina who dances too slowly and ignores her partner, and a silly, too perky French ballerina who blows kisses at everyone. With gala performance, Tudor was making fun of dancer stereotypes that existed in 1938. So it does take thought these days to successfully communicate that joke to modern audiences. Of course, when it comes to ballet parody, you can't beat Ballet Trocadero de Monte Carlo. For those of you who may not know, these are men. Ballet Trocadero is successful because they are well-trained classical dancers. We've all seen on YouTube, for example, the dad with the little pot belly and a beard, wearing a pink tutu and prancing around. That's cute. But if you really want to do a proper ballet parody, you need professionals who know what they're doing and who understand what they are making fun of. Now, if you combine the essence of gala performance, making fun of ballerina mannerisms, and the trocs, men in drag, you get a very funny scene from Alexei Ratmansky's The Bright Stream. By the way, Ratmansky's ballet, The Seasons, will be performed by SFB later this month. Now, The Bright Stream was originally made for the Bolshoi in 1935, but it was banned by the Soviet authorities. Stalin was not amused, and the poor librettist was even sent to the Gulag and shot. But Alexei Ratmansky revived the work in 2003 and presented it as a comic ballet in 2 acts. The story takes place, where else? On a collective farm. So let's see now that gala Trocadero style scene. In the plot, the husband of a ballerina is trying to fool an old gentleman, and the music is Shostakovich. Okay. Let's move on now to some classic comic story ballets, starting with Coppelia. Coppelia was created in 1870 in Paris, and in 1939, Willem Christensen staged the first American full-length production of Coppelia for the San Francisco Ballet. George Balanchine and Alexandra Danilova created their own production in 1974 for the New York City Ballet, and that's the version you see here, performed by SFB, That's Vanessa Zahorian. Now here's the story. Dr. Coppelia is an inventor who has made a life-size doll. It is so beautiful and lifelike that Franz, a village youth, becomes infatuated with it and starts to ignore his girlfriend, Swanhilda. Swanhilda finds out the evil truth about Dr. Coppelia, tricks him by pretending to be the doll, and rescues Franz just in time. Franz learns a lesson, and the two real-life lovers are reunited. It's a comic situation where the audience is in on the joke. We have knowledge that some of the characters on stage don't have, and we laugh at their reactions. This is Francis Chung and Pascal Molat. And next is a clip where the dancers and the stager, Judith Fugate, talk about the comedy in this ballet. In the first photo, you'll see Danilova Balanchine and SFB's artistic director, Helgi Thomason.
Helgi and I were colleagues in New York City Ballet. I actually had the good fortune to dance with him a couple of times, which was great. And he was the original Franz. I try, when I'm teaching, let's say we're teaching it to 4 different lead couples here in San Francisco. And each woman, each man, I want to give them a little bit of leeway.
She would give us options of how we could do different things. It wasn't just one way of doing or reacting.
Timing is really important in comedy. Every actor knows it. So in this ballet, in this particular piece, not only the technical part is important, but you also have to develop your side of actor.
Dramatic, you just can do little look and it says a lot. When in this more comedian role, you can actually let it go and show even more. It's not going to be too much.
I mean, Franz is not a prince. He's a town guy who's in love with 2 girls, with Swanhilda and Coppelia, but he doesn't know she's a doll.
There's not just sections where it's purely dancing and then pantomime and then dancing, it's all incorporated into one.
Swanhilda is a huge role, and she has to be very different in each act.
Very lighthearted, very playful, and a little bit sassy.
The second act, she is portraying the doll. She plays a little trick on Dr. Coppelia.
And then in Act 3, she's a beautiful bride getting married and being elegant and dancing the grand pas de deux. You're seeing dancers that maybe you're familiar with in other kinds of roles, but in a totally different environment.
All right. Now next is La Femelle Gardee, which can be translated as the badly guarded daughter. The earliest version of this ballet was presented in France in 1789, and it was important at that time because it was a ballet about regular people, not kings or queens or Greek gods. Of course, the ballet has seen many changes and scores and reworkings, but today the most well-known version is Frederick Ashton's, which he created in 1960 for England's Royal Ballet. Frederick Ashton was founding choreographer and a former director of the Royal Ballet. His inspiration for La Femelle Gardee was the English countryside, specifically his beloved Suffolk. In the ballet, Ashton weaves together classical dance with folk dance, clog dancing, maypole, etc., and vaudeville. The story is about Lise, a beautiful country girl who loves Colas, a local lad, but Lise's mother wants her daughter to marry Alain, the geeky, weird son of a wealthy landowner. Here's a bit of passive-aggressive behavior by Lise against her mother, who's sitting at a spinning wheel. La Femelle Gardee illustrates the timeless nature of physical comedy, or slapstick, which is defined as broad humor, absurd situations, and vigorous, often violent actions. Despite cultural differences, this type of humor does register with most human beings. Let's see a bit of the Royal Birmingham Ballet's production of La Fille. Now, in that last video, you'll have noticed Widow Simone. That's the mother wearing the clogs. That character is usually played by a man for laughs. And as we saw earlier, men are often cast as the evil stepsisters in Cinderella, but not always. In Christopher Wheeldon's recent production of Cinderella for San Francisco Ballet, the stepsisters are played by women, namely Frances Chung and Sarah Van Patten. Let's take a look. Christopher Wheeldon is a prolific, versatile dance maker, and I'm hoping to ask Katita about what it's like to work with Christopher on comic bits in the studio. Nice t-shirt, Christopher, go Warriors. Finally, Don Quixote, a comic ballet that's filled with physical humor, romance, and spectacular dancing. The ballet is based on a few episodes from the great Cervantes novel, and the focus is more on two lovers, Kitri and Basilio, than Don Q himself. But the Don and his sidekick, Sancho Panza, are very much present. There have been many adaptations of Don Quixote, going all the way back to the 1700s. But most influential is Petipa's 1869 production, which was revised in 1900 by Alexander Gorsky for the Bolshoi in Moscow. Fast forward about 100 years, and in 2003, Yuri Posakov brought his own memories of dancing the Bolshoi Don Q to the studios at SFB, where he and artistic director Helgi Thomason then created what is described by critics as a ballet so light and lively, so well danced, and so much fun. The score is Minkus. Here we see the ballet's heroine, Kitri, and her financially strapped but dashing lover, Basilio, the barber. Kitri's innkeeper father doesn't want his daughter to marry Basilio. Instead, he wants Kitri to marry the quite ridiculous but very wealthy Gamache. Kitri doesn't like him. The plot proceeds with windmills and taverns, gypsies and matadors, and a dream sequence with Cupid and the queen of the dryads, the wood nymphs. In the end, as a result of some clever deception, Dad gives his permission for Kitri and Basilio to marry, and there's a joyous wedding. The humor in Don Q can be found in the characters whose personalities are well defined. We laugh at how they react to certain situations and each other. To get a flavor of this ballet, let's take a look at this clip. Okay, as we careen toward the conclusion of this slideshow, let's end with this question. When it comes to the plots of these four comic story ballets, Don Q, Coppelia, Cinderella, and La Fille Gardee, are you beginning to see a pattern? All four ballets focus on romantic couples that are facing some barrier to being together, some older adult. And in three of the stories, that older adult is a parent who wants to marry off his or her daughter to a wealthy man. But in the end, true love wins because the young girl defies authority and takes action. The reason for these plot similarities may be found in ballet's connection to commedia dell'arte, an early type of professional theater that was popular in the 16th and 17th century in Europe, where ballet was born. Think Harlequin and Columbine. The classic traditional plot in Commedia dell'arte involves young lovers who want to marry, but some elder is in the way. The story usually ends happily with the lovers being forgiven for any wrongdoings, and then there's a wedding. So that certainly sounds familiar to me. Anyway, it's fun to think that what was entertaining folks centuries ago is still making us laugh today. And now I'd like to transition over to continuing the interview with Katita with this photo of our guest teaching her son the fine art of facial expression in ballet. Okay. There we are. Hello, my dear.
Hello.
I'm hoping we can go a little over time, and just let me know, Jasmine, if that's possible. But I would like to kind of jump into a Don Q question because it just opened last weekend. And what's been your connection to Don Q at SFB, past and present, as far as ballet master, dancer?
Of all things, the first variation that I ever learned and I ever performed was, I want to say I was 9 years old, and it was the third act variation from Don Q. And I had to perform it for a competition, which I am proud to say I won when I was around 9. But I still, watching the dancers do that variation, I can still feel it, even though I haven't done it since I was 9 years old. But I can still feel it. And then my next experience with it was here at San Francisco Ballet. I was Mercedes in the original production, and Queen of the Dryads. So I got to do both of those parts, and loved it.
Can we talk about your view of the comic characters? There's some that are very, obviously comic characters. Sancho Panza. Can you talk a little bit about him and a little bit about Gamache?
It's interesting because you talked about it yourself. I tuned in a little earlier about how comedy is affected by the time in which it is experienced, and both of those characters could be very challenging. Gamache is a very flamboyant character that is a caricature of what I believe is a perceived persona of the time in France. And at that time, men in high court were very flamboyant in a way that could be interpreted in a different way necessarily today. So it is easy to interpret that character as a stereotype of a particular stereotype that isn't necessarily accurate, because historically there was a flamboyance to men in court that has a different connotation today. So it can be, it's a difficult part to play, because you have to portray it humorously. He's a fool, he's a fop, but he's royal and he's regal and he's of the upper class, and he's not necessarily any kind of particular bent, if you know what I mean. So
he also has a lot of money and feels very entitled, perhaps. So
exactly. And he's obviously he has fallen in love, or thinks he's fallen in love, with this beautiful girl who is not necessarily without means. Her parents are both tavern keepers, so they're not peasants. They are, I believe that they are not poor. So it's not necessarily a match that isn't out of place, but he's very of his courtly world, with his fastidiousness, and which is what makes him funny, because he doesn't fit into this more normal world that most people inhabit.
And Sancho Panza on the other end.
Oh, Sancho. He is a I think he is a friend of Don Quixote, he's a servant of Don Quixote. I believe Don Quixote was a noble man. I don't know historically exactly, so forgive me if I get this wrong, but he is a scholar and I suspect of noble birth, but not necessarily wealthy. And he has a servant that helps him out. He's older, he's a little daughtery, and Sancho is kind of a simple person that helps him out and is interested particularly mostly in food. That's his passion, is food. And he does like he does appreciate
a little sangria, yeah,
and sangria and but his tastes are simple. And Don Quixote is a scholar and an intellectual, and he reads a book and he becomes convinced that this book represents what his crusade. He has a crusade, and that Sancho Panza is his aiding knight, and that he must go forth and have an adventure, and Sancho is his accomplice.
There's a lot of comedy in Don Q, and I don't know if you consider the character of Don Quixote himself to be a comic character, but there's also a lot of beautiful dancing and romantic, like the role you performed as Mercedes. That's not comic. Can you talk about the beautiful bits of Don Quixote?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. I mean, the dancing in this production is extraordinary, I have to say. Especially, I've seen it many iterations, and every iteration I think that the dancers are extraordinary, and this iteration speaks for itself. All of the dancers from top to bottom have just been exquisite. It's a beautiful production. The group numbers are fantastic. The music is so fun, and it's so engaging and so catchy. The dryad scene is a beautiful contrast to the comedy, where it's this very romantic, lovely, classical dream scene that I must say those ladies are dancing to perfection. It's just magnificent.
When we talk about comedy in ballet, does it always have to be broad and big?
No, I don't think so. And that's one of the, like, for instance, in Don Quixote, there's a section in the first act that's called the minuet, which is where Don Quixote expresses his admiration for Kitri and tries to take her away for a grand adventure. And she is not sparring, but yes, sparring a little bit with Basilio, and so she taunts him a bit by inviting Don Quixote to dance the minuet, and Basilio thinks it's going to be with him, but she dances with Don Quixote because she's kind of trying to fan the flames of his jealousy, and it's very subtle. It could be done very, and Gamache also thinks he's going to dance with Kitri, but ends up dancing with one of the friends, and it is a very subtle bit of humor, where they're all, Basilio's dancing with a friend but looking at Kitri, and Kitri is dancing with Don Quixote but looking at Basilio, and Gamache is, trying foppishly to attract Kitri, and the friend is distracting him. So, but it's not very over the head.
Yeah, slapstick.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's more subtle. So there are a lot of little moments like that.
Now, we saw the brilliant photo of you as the evil stepmother in Cinderella. You've worked with Christopher Wheeldon, and I understand that he kind of creates a comedy or a lot of bits on the spot. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh my gosh, being in the room, I have often thought, when I'm in the room with Chris Wheeldon, especially whenever he's creating any ballet, because he's a very, very charming and funny man. He just is. Every rehearsal with him is a joy, and often hilarious because he is so funny, and his turn of phrase is so engaging and witty, and he captures the room, whatever ballet he's trying to do. But when he was creating Cinderella, I remember he created or began to create the role of the stepmother here in San Francisco. It was a co-production, I think, I want to say with Amsterdam.
The Dutch National, yeah.
Dutch National, thank you. Oh, sorry. But so he did parts of it on them and parts of it on us, but he started the process of creating the stepmother here in San Francisco, and those rehearsals were so funny because he's such he's a wonderful actor, and when he demonstrates what he's looking for and what he's aiming for, it was so funny. So you got the humor directly from him because you couldn't miss it. He described the holding of the glass and how she has a moment where she's in the I can't remember, I apologize, second act. She has a solo. It's her drunk solo, the stepmother. She's seeing that her stepdaughters are not going to get the prince. She's becoming more inebriated, and she finally has a solo where the prince comes out and dances and Cinderella comes out and dances, and she finally decides, well, it's my turn now. And she comes out holding a theoretical, no, she has a glass in her hand, and she has to maneuver dancing without spilling a drop. And his demonstration of that and how he described everything was just, I never felt I ever was as funny as Christopher Wheeldon.
Can comic timing be taught? I mean, everyone knows that timing is everything in comedy. Are there some people that are just naturally more funny and they just know when to, to go for the punchline, the kill?
I think it's like with acting. Some people are better actors than others, but I do think some of it can be taught. I know I had an experience. I was doing another comic ballet, did Filling Station. Again, a drunk character seems to be my, that's what I excel at in comedy, is drunk characters. But I remember learning this character and I couldn't get it right. I just couldn't. Every rehearsal, it just wasn't working. And then the opening night came and I was in the wings and thinking, I've never gotten it right. I've never gotten it right. And the minute that the curtain went up and I felt the audience, suddenly, I don't know what happened. I just felt it. And it just suddenly effortlessly worked. And I felt it. So there are a lot of things that go into what makes something work. A lot of it is the audience. A lot of it is
the weird thing, because what the exact same part done the same way one night, the audience is in stitches, they're rolling in the aisles, and then the next night it's just crickets.
Nothing.
It's like, how can this be? It's like they're texting each other before the show saying, don't laugh at this section. It's like it's organized.
It's really interesting. I think that's one of the things that the pandemic has really brought home to me, and I think a lot of us, is how important it is to have an audience. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if it's a comedy or a drama or whatever. There's something about the energy that you feel. The minute the curtain goes up, there's like this communal energy that you feel from the audience, and sometimes the curtain goes up and you go, oh boy, not a great night. Not necessarily for the dancers, but you can feel it's like, the audience, just not quite there. And then other nights, the curtain goes up and you feel it. It's like, oh, they are with us, they are here, they are, and you feed off each other. It's an amazing thing. And with comedy in particular, it is so important to feel that energy from the audience, because tragedy can work in a vacuum, but comedy cannot. Mm-hmm. You have to have a response or it doesn't work. So for comedy to function, you need to have people who observe it and who participate. Comedy is involves an audience, and drama can be more personal and doesn't require the same input. It's an interesting phenomenon.
Is there, just two more questions and perhaps I should wrap up. What comic role was most fun for you personally in your career?
The concert, without a doubt. It was, I actually specifically asked Helgi for that to be part of my retirement performance. And that one for sure. And also Filling Station. I loved Filling Station. I loved doing it. There's a liberation to comedy because, oh, and I have a funny story about the concert, which I'll say in a minute, because I know we have to go. But when the audience is allowed to laugh, you don't have to worry about making mistakes quite so much. When it's a serious ballet, you don't want to mess up. But if it's a comedy, there's a little bit more room for freedom, which brings me to my story about the concert. I was an apprentice, or I was in the corps, and we were doing the concert for the first time, and I was in the mistake waltz. And believe it or not, the mistake waltz, however, it's highly choreographed, and you have to be in certain places at certain times for it to work. It's a choreographed piece. There is no make it up as you go along. It's very specific. And I remember we did it, and somebody went to the wrong place in one of the sections. And we finished the ballet, and I was backstage, and I'm not going to mention names, but like 4 people on the artistic staff came at me because I had messed it entirely up, and it wasn't me. I had messed it up. And I remember that. I thought that was so funny. And we laughed about it because I was like, no, it wasn't me. But how could you mistake the mistake waltz?
Waltz, absolutely.
Nobody would have known, but I remember that.
Do you know why there aren't that many comic ballets? When I was preparing for this, there aren't that many.
I think it's because, well, I think it's a couple things. I think that some people, I think some art forms they tend to be seen as very serious, and I think that in a way is a shame because they're so much more than that. Ballet, opera they both have so much of everything in them. There are a ton of hilarious ballets out there, but I think like I said before, I think comedy it's not as universal. So to find comedy that will resonate with a huge audience is trickier. Mm-hmm. With comedy, you tend to have your favorites, like you have a comedian that you like or a show that you like. So when you take an art form that has a varied audience, it can be challenging to find humor that reaches everyone.
Yes, yes.
So that's what I would say about that.
Yes. And any last thoughts about comic ballet that you want to share with the audience?
Oh, I love comic ballet. I think it's great. And I would actually recommend for a lot of people, there's I can't remember what it's called, but if you go on YouTube, there is a 4 Little Swans that was, I think it's an Israeli choreographer, I can't remember, that is hilarious, is all I'm going to say.
It's called 4 Little Swans?
It's the little swans from Swan Lake, but it's a different take on it.
Oh, okay.
There's one that a Japanese troupe did, I think, where it's all hands. That is amazing.
Oh yes. Yeah.
But this is different. This is gosh, I wish I could remember what it is. But if you look up comedic 4 Little Swans, it'll come up, and it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Is all I'll say. And Trocadero, love Trocadero.
Yes, they know how to do it.
And they're so good.
Yes, yes.
Technically, they are so good. We've had a couple dancers years ago. A couple dancers from their company came into class with us, wow. And it was amazing. They danced on point. They did the whole class on point, and they were ferociously, incredibly good. So,
all right, Jasmine, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you so much. I love ending on that. The trots were ferociously good, and it makes me just so excited that that we have all of these different comic ballets that we can talk about. Thank you, Katita, for taking us through Cinderella and Filling Station and Concert. And I wish we had more time to talk about all the different ballets that you've helped bring to life on stage. So thank you for sharing your time, your expertise, your experiences, your memories and stories. It's really wonderful to chat with you.
Pleasure.
And thank you, Claire. The video clips, the interview clips that you had from dancers over the years and the photos were so well worth the wait. And I thank you for your informative lecture and talk about comic ballets. I always learn something new, and that was really wonderful. So thank you to our audience also for being a part of our unscripted Comic Points of View ballet lecture series tonight. It was great to be able to kind of laugh at the situation while we were talking about comic ballets. So thank you everyone for going on that journey with us. Thank you, Katita. Thank you, Claire, for this wonderful Points of View lecture. I want to also thank all of our audiences for continuing to support us during the pandemic. And as we are back in the Opera House, I hope that you all get a chance to see Don Quixote before it closes on Sunday, and that you join us for the rest of the season. For more information about our Points of View lecture series, as well as all of our education events and audience engagement events, please visit us at sfballet.org/events. We look forward to sharing Helgi's farewell season with all of you, and I look forward to seeing you at the ballet soon. On behalf of everyone at San Francisco Ballet, we wish you and your family good health. Take care and see you next time at the ballet. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. What the?